Okay, welcome to this session. So this session is about the launch of the EOSC Observatory. I'm Natalia Manola and I'm from Open Air. And what we would like to present here, and we would like to not only to present but also to discuss, is about monitoring. So the launch of the EOSC Observatory, okay, so how we will structure the discussion. So Gareth O'Neill from Technopolis Group and the EOSC Future project will first present the EOSC Observatory, what it is and what are we presenting and how we're working about it on a tool on the web. Then Volker Beckmann from the chair, or you're the chair of the co-chair of the EOSC Steering Board, will tell us a few words about the indicators, about the framework that they were using. So what are we monitoring and how we're going about it. On the next session, Sofia Abrahamsson from the Swedish Research Council and a member of the Steering Board will tell us a few things about how the members and the Steering Board, the survey and what was it about and how the response is. And last, Thomas Niedermark from the European Commission Policy Officers will tell us how this EOSC Observatory just, fits into the bigger picture and the broader picture of what the Commission and the observatories in the world were doing. And then we're going to start a discussion on, what you've seen, the discussion on, and your feedback on what we have done, how we should go, in the next steps, and how that fits in your own countries. So with that, I would like to have Gareth come to the podium. And you're not coming?
I am coming.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julia. That's probably not a good idea to put that there. I'll give it a couple of seconds if people want to grab the QR there, so you have the slides and maybe some of the links that are in there.
Is this supposed to the observatory?
Yes. No, sorry, this is to the slides. There's another QR in there for the observatory book. I'll just give you another few seconds. And can somebody just check that works, that you can see the slides? Put your hand up. Yeah? So, okay, they're not my holiday photos. So, I'll give you one more second. And the background here is basically in Work Package 2 of the EOSC Future project. One of our main tasks is to deliver an EOSC Observatory. And this EOSC Observatory is basically a policy intelligence tool, or if you will, an online dashboard to track policies, practices and impacts of EOSC and open science. I'm just going to say EOSC from now on, but there I also mean open science. And I think we're going to hear more about this framework, the policies, practices and impacts from both Volker, Sophia and also Thomas as we go through this session. So at the back end, this is basically a survey tool to collect data. We will be running surveys. We will also be pulling in data from other sources such as the Open Air Research Graph or the EOS portal itself, or for instance Eurostat or a number of other data sources. And the idea here is then to present this publicly in this dashboard so that the EOS community, let's say, can track policies and visualize the data and extract the data and run their own analysis on it. And the idea here is that these surveys will be annual and that over time then you will be able to actually track the progress of the implementation of EOSC at different levels, but in any case at the very start here at national level. So the idea here is to support the monitoring of EOSC readiness at national level through the member states and associated countries, and also to track the different contributions, financial contributions that are being delivered to EOSC. And a side, let's say, support of this tool is that by bringing stakeholders together, we aim to try and support the alignment and development of actionable policies for the different stakeholders, such as the member states, associated countries, or the European Commission, and to help them also collect use cases, which we've already done. I think Thomas will talk about these use cases later, and also to support mutual learning. So as we find examples here, as countries see that some countries, for instance, are excelling in particular aspects of open science, that they can reach out to the colleagues, they can look at the use cases and they can support each other to implement this, or try to align with how they're doing this or how they're investing in this. Now, the monitoring ecosystem itself is relatively complex. I'm not going to go through everything, but in any case, just to show you, for number one here, one of these layers, if you will, is to monitor the EOSC readiness at national level. And the data that we have in the observatory at the moment will essentially show you the first survey that was run on this. So this is to track EOSC readiness at national level through the member states, associated countries. Another layer, or rather the next two layers, is the work done by the colleagues in the EOSC Association. And that is, I think you've heard of that already several times now in this conference. That's to track and monitor the EOSC partnership. So looking specifically at contributions that are delivered there, both financial and in kind, and then also to, let's say, link that to the KPIs that are in the EOSC partnership. So to support the implementation from the members of the association and to collect their contributions. So these are other monitoring activities going on for the EOSC partnership. And then we have other monitoring activities taking place, particularly in projects. We ourselves have built on work from the task force landscaping of the 5B projects. And the idea here as well through the observatory is to collect data that's out there, put it together, and then through what we will call country pages to present that at national level and to show all the different activities that are going on and in some way try to connect these. Very simply then, the dashboard, and this is very simple, what I'm showing you here is there is a back end and there's a front end. The back end, to get in there, you need to log in through the EOSC AAI, as I have done here, as you can see. And then once in there, you're giving a specific set of access. Because I'm involved in developing this, I have full access, let's say. Thomas from the Commission also has full access to look across, as do the chairs of the EOSC Steering Board. Then the members of the Steering Board, for instance, will have also access, although sometimes different layers. I've got lots of options here, but this is to show you that this is my survey interface. I go over to the left, I click surveys, and then I can see all the different surveys that are running, and I can link that to the data that's in there. Or for instance, I can get visualizations on EOSC readiness based on the survey data that's there. So these are on the surveys that are running currently. I can see who's been filling this in. I can see what they filled in. I can see if it's been validated. And then also I can make surveys in here or give access to others to make surveys. Then at the front end, this is what it currently looks like. It will change as we go into the new phase for the EOSC Steering Board with their new monitoring framework. But here, just crucially, as you see, on the left, we have the policies and the practices that are being collected by the Steering Board in their first survey. And then as you go through the categories, you see all the different options that were presented to them in the first survey, with the idea being that every time you click one of the options or click one of your categories, that you get the map, you see who is essentially implementing this policy or not, who's investing or not, and then also linked to, for instance, use cases or linked to financial strategies and so forth. So this is the interactive dashboard as it looks. And on top of that then, we have a lot of documentation, such as reports that are already coming out of the work that's been done. For instance, we have the monitoring framework for national contributions to EOSC. So this was done together with the Commission and the Steering Board to start preparing the new surveys going forward from now. And we also have the first analysis of the survey data done by the colleagues, Vanya here at CESTA, which will also be published online. These will go onto the EOSC Future website, but we have also made a Zenodo community for the EOSC Observatory where you can basically find all documents. So keep an eye on that, the link is there. These will go on there probably next week, and then we will start uploading more documents. And as time goes by, as the years go by, let's say, and the annual surveys go by, you should be able to find all the survey analyses, data sets, and anything else relevant there in the Zenodo community. I think with that, I'll let you have a look at it. That's there. I'll show it in a minute, so I'll leave this on the screen just for 1 minute. Maybe just to say that this is our first real public iteration of the dashboard for you to play with. I don't think the mobile version is really functioning as it should right now, so that's going to be updated, I guess, within the next month. But in any case, I think on wide view on your phone and on the laptop or your typical interface, you can already start using the observatory. Also on top of that, if you spot any mistakes or anything, please do contact us, because we are going to be iteratively developing this. We're going to be adding new functionalities as we go, new visualizations, and then looking forward, we'll be adding the new data from the surveys. So right now what's in there is the data from the first survey on national contributions to EOSC 2021 that was done by the EOSC Steering Board and validated. This was 34 countries, if I'm correct, validated their data, and this is their responses in this first pilot survey. We will soon, well now actually, launch the next survey for the EOSC Steering Board. So this is national contributions to EOSC 2022. That data collection will run in the observatory in the back end. I think until, what's the deadline there? For the EOSC Steering Board survey for next year? Is there a rough deadline? Mark. So next year, with the idea being that that data then will be validated, I guess, by the end of the summer, perhaps, and then with the aim of presenting that after the summer next year. So there'll be a new interface, more data in the dashboard from then on. Okay, let's see if I can quickly show you what the dashboard looks like, just to give you a taste. This is just the home page. There's not much there, so you can read about what it is. You can see the layers I've just proposed in the EOSC monitoring ecosystem, what the dashboard will do. Country pages are coming soon. And up here, under EOSC readiness, or here, I think there's a button to go explore it, so let's do that. Then we get the dashboard interface here. So the first thing to note is that there's two main sections, as was in the survey: EOSC policies, EOSC practices. EOSC policies, you see here, options for EOSC relevant policies, implementation measures, financial strategies, EOSC relevant activities, EOSC relevant services, EOSC relevant infrastructure. And then under the practices, we have mandated organizations, national monitoring, reporting, and use cases. So just to note that this is from the first survey. As we go into the next survey next year, the monitoring framework has expanded, has many more categories, and will give you a lot more options, let's say, to interact with data. And to give you one example, so I keep in time, here we have EOSC relevant policies at national or regional level. There are one or more policies relevant for EOSC in place. So if you're blue here, then you're implementing a policy. If you're grey, you're either telling us you're not implementing a policy or you haven't filled in the survey. And then here, for instance, in this one, with the yellow, we see countries that have a financial strategy linked to one of these policies. So the idea here is that over time, more of these countries should be turning blue and more of these dots should be appearing, and we can track that over time as we go. And then as you see here, there are a lot of other options for this question. Is there a policy in planning related to EOSC? The map changes. There one or more of the open science policies explicitly mentions EOSC. The policy addresses open access to data, data management and/or FAIR, and the green here is countries that have use cases on this. The policy addresses fairization of data. Here again, we see countries with use cases and also who have financial strategies on fair data. Policy addresses open access to software. Policy addresses preservation and reuse of scientific information. Policy addresses infrastructures that include aspects of open science. Policy addresses skills and competencies. Policy addresses incentives and rewards, and policies address citizen science. So also here, for example, on citizen science, you see a slight distribution up in the north, and the idea here again would be that these start filling in over time. And also with this mutual learning, the idea here is that a country can go, they can see who is implementing this or doing something on it, who potentially has a financial strategy or a use case, and then they can reach out in the steering board and ask them, what exactly are you doing, how are you doing it, and how could I do it? And I think already we're starting to see that in the EOSC Steering Board, which Thomas may explain later. I will leave it there to keep on time. I will let you explore that on your own, and I'll say thank you.
Maybe you have one or two questions before we go to the next. No questions? Everything okay? Go ahead.
It's there.
Yeah, thank you for that talk. Really, it was really interesting. So I was wondering, is the map that you have, is that like the endpoint of the observatory? Because I was looking for like the underlying documents, for example, the actual policies.
The data or the documents?
The documents.
Looking for the policy documents.
Yeah. Are they in any way linked to this?
They will be linked. I can tell you, they will be linked.
So we are collecting in the survey. It's not mandatory, of course, but they have the option of filling in links to documentation that are relevant, right, for all of the questions, and even uploading documents if they have them. The question now is, how do we present that? And I think the idea is that we put them through the country pages. For instance, you click Ireland, you get a narrative on what is happening with open science and EOSC in the country. You can select data there, right, so tailor it, how many publications in open access are there, what policies are in place, and then, you know, in the policy section, fair data, you can see if there's a policy in place, and if there's a document, you know, click it. Obviously, over time, with each annual repetition, more documents will fill in, and then it has to be checked, is this document updated or not, and we have to check if there's other documents, right? So, long story short, yes, but not for all countries, because it's up to them.
Yeah, and one additional question. So the aspect that I would be personally most interested in is the number or percentage of data sets that are either fair or open. Is this also something that will be covered within the observatory?
So it's not there now because it wasn't included in this in the survey, but in the next survey and in the monitoring framework of the Steering Board for National Contributions to EOSC, that's one of the output indicators that were collected. Much more specifically, there's output indicators on publications and open access, fair data sets, open data sets, data management plans, data stewards, and a lot of other output indicators, right? The problem there is, where do we get the data and how trustworthy is that data? So I'm going to look to Natalia because we're going to collect some of that data from the EOS portal, but also the open air research graph. There is already, for instance, in the graph per year, or however you time box that, data sets, open data sets and open software sets and open publications. But we will also, I hope in the future, be adding fair data sets, ...
May I add to this is that, what we hope is that this tool will become a place where, the rest of the infrastructure that is going to feed into this tool will improve. The quality of the data, what we consider, a data set, what, all of this, we will gather, the problems or the issues or everything, and we will see how to update the underlying infrastructure.
And just to bore you with the details, what we will actually do in the survey is there will be questions that we ask the Steering Board members to fill in, click yes or tell us more, or give us a document or a link, but then we will also automatically extract, for instance, number of fair data sets from the graph, put that into the digital survey and say, this is the number we have, is this correct? And we have an opportunity then to say yes or no, and then that's the data point that will go into the graph, into the survey, let's say, the dashboard for that year.
Okay, second question and then last one for this.
Okay, thank you very much for a very nice presentation. Question, going deeper, this is national, institutional policies. What's the plan about that? It's going to be displayed there or not?
So in the new monitoring framework, for sure, there's two types of indicators for policies, and that is number of RPOs that has a policy on X and number of FOs that have a policy on X. Now the deeper question then is how many RPOs and RFOs are there in the country, which is not always that easy to ascertain, but in principle, yes, we'll be collecting that, and that will be done per country. And then of course there could be links to those policies and practices going forward. So that is asked in the next survey coming, and then that's across all 8 categories that the Steering Board has defined, right? Those 8 categories are publications, data, more specifically data management, open data, fair data, then open source software, help me out now, services that are offered through EOSC, infrastructure, which is broken down into data stewardship, data preservation, and then the last one.
I think we should not go into detail, but what we foresee is that in this tool, we will publish the surveys, not the field surveys, but the questions, so everyone will know what the Steering Board is doing. I think we will close this this one now, but the idea is that we would like to have your feedback at any point in time, and this is how we will enable the feedback process, because the key thing here is not to have an observatory which is policing, but an observatory who will give us the tools and the intelligence to move forward and to learn from each other. Now Volker will come, and I think the idea here is that the indicators, everyone is talking about indicators, right, in framework.
Talk much about the indicators.
Oh, you're not talking. Okay, so then we can have the discussion of the indicators
Sophia.
afterwards.
So I know that you want to see what is in the survey, so that's going to be Sophia. So just to give you a bit the idea why we do this, right? So, for example, we are not going to have, also not next year, we are not going to have the list of CNRS, for example, has open science policy, and here's the link. We are probably not going to go down to this degree. We are going to say that's the percentage of RPOs which have open science policy in this country. So our approach is much more driven by this need to better coordinate, to better give frames for our research communities. So because we have so many participation stakeholders, we need coordination, and we need for them on national level policies to give them a frame how to move forward. And then ideally they should pick up, the RPOs and RFOs should pick up this type of policy and have a similar one adapted to their needs on the institutional level. So, and the great advantage is that we have in the steering board, we have a lot of countries in there, not only European countries, but even beyond. And this is a great way of collecting information and of sharing intelligence there. So, as I said yesterday, so in principle what we do at the national level is that we provide policies and we finance, ideally, these actions. And then the motivation for the monitoring is that we want to share the best practices. You saw this in the map. You can then in the next year, you can, for each policy aspect, you can then click there and you say, okay, this is my use case I have here, my best practice, and here you find the link in the short description. We want to also, this is not in this year, we want to have an overview of actual investment. So we really want to have also, how are we doing in evolving EOSC also in financial terms. And we want to demonstrate to you as researchers the commitment of the countries to EOSC. And we want to monitor evolution, not the current state. That's not so interesting, right? Especially for money, for example. It's very hard to really define how much do we invest in country X in this year in the EOSC. But if at least I use the same methodology over the years, then you will see if we increase this investment or if it's stable or if it goes down. And of course we want to motivate us to do better and more for EOSC, and we have seen this already through the survey, through the discussions, that colleagues say, yes, I actually want to know how many of my research performing organizations have a policy on open science. So what is the impact of what we are doing at the national level than at the institutional level? So we want to monitor policies, then the practices like the investment, and then finally the impact. I go a bit faster, and perhaps to take away here that we really aim finally at the impact of what we are doing. We want to increase the reproducibility, we want to increase the trust in science, we want to make research more efficient and more effective, and we want that all these results we are financing in the countries are then used not only by the researcher who has produced them, but by the communities, by other communities, and by the society at large. So we, of course, down there, we want to avoid duplication and ease the burden for contributors. This means for those who have to provide information to the surveys. We aim at having at the end one framework where nobody is asked twice and nobody has to answer the same question twice, because that there's this fatigue of surveys. And I mean, we contributed to this definitely this year and last year, because it's yet another one, but we hope then in the midterm that we reduce the number of surveys through this approach. So this is in principle what we do this time. With the first survey, we look at research data management infrastructures and EOSC. In terms of policies and in terms of practices. And in the next survey for next year, we are going to look at open access to publications, citizen science, and incentives, rewards, and skills. And the impact part, in my opinion, that's very much the part which is taken care of by the association survey, because they are very close to the organizations which are really providing service to EOSC and which see how these services are picked up and used. So then what we try to make it easier for everybody, we looked at the different monitoring aspects, and this is just one example where in the different monitoring approaches like ERA, EOSC Steering Board, Association, and the NPR, National Points of Reference, yeah, it's a strange, and they all have a similar but not exactly the same indicator, and we try to convert this into something where we can all agree on, making this easier, that also finally we don't want to kill all these monitorings, but they can then, the ERA can then go to the EOSC Observatory and just pull the information out there, and there has to be no direct interaction and asking questions and so on. So, just to summarize, so of course EOSC needs the strong commitment at the national level. The monitoring framework provides opportunities to share best practices, to motivate, to align and to move forward. And we need to harmonize between the monitoring approaches, and we want to pull information rather than ask, and we want never to ask twice. Right now that's not yet the case, but perhaps starting next year we manage that. And I think that's also important. Open science also needs an open monitoring framework. So as you said, what are the basis of your answers and so on. So we already want to provide this year an Excel sheet with the results, with all the data which is in the survey, and then we want to continue with that. We don't want to hide anything. So the questions are already public, the answers should be public, and we should really be very open in exchanging this and also being open for suggestions to improve the survey. Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much, Volker. Any questions for Volker? Everything was clear?
Everybody's waiting.
Okay, so I think what I would like to come after the discussion is the indicator framework. So, to see if others are doing anything in their countries around, not EOSC, but around open science, and what kind of framework, not indicators, framework they're using. So, Sophia will tell us, she will delve in more into the survey. So, Sophia. Thank you.
Okay, so I will try to guide you through some of the results that we had from the survey as well, and which you will be able to see largely on the dashboard at the moment. So the first pilot EOSC Steering Board survey on national contributions was published in December last year, and you will be able to find this on the EOSC Association webpage as well. So if you want to have a look at the questions and the definitions and guidance on these questions, you will be able to access them through this link up here. There were 19 questions on EOSC policies and investments, EOSC practices, and the data were collected from the steering board members until August this year. There were 45 countries who were invited to participate in the survey, and we received validated replies from 34 out of the 39 member states and associated countries that were invited. And you can see here to the right those elements as well, that the open science elements that were included. And I'm here focused on maybe more on the policy questions in particular, and as you've already have seen from Gareth, there are many data on there relating to different parts, different open science elements for both the policies and practices, but well, we just have a look at the policies for the time being as an example, and there is a lot of information on there on the system for you to explore further. So among the questions that were asked from the member states, it's if they had one or several EOSC relevant policies. And here is to be understood as a policy, a policy, strategy, recommendation, or a legislation that applied to all research funding organizations or research performing organizations at a national level. And then more specifically to watch what elements of open science that they also covered. So to the left here, you can see the indicated countries here in green, that have replied that they have at least one EOSC relevant policy in place, and to the right, those countries that have a policy that explicitly mentions EOSC in the policy. So although these maps are similar to a great extent, it's perhaps not surprisingly can be noted here that having an EOSC relevant policy does not always mean that EOSC has to be mentioned within the policy. And looking at other open science elements of relevance as well, there are differences, as you can see here in the coverage of different elements covered by the policies in different countries. So this slide here shows those countries that have replied that their policies address these more digital aspects within the policy. So if you look at open access to data, data management and fair, open access to software, and infrastructures that include aspects of open science. So it's perhaps already evident from these maps, and just by doing the visual comparison here, that for example, open access to software is much less covered than the areas of open access to data management and fair. If you look at the human and cultural aspects contributing to making open science the new normal, these maps here of skills and competencies, incentives and reward, and citizen science could illustrate this. So if we compare these maps, these are perhaps covered perhaps to a lesser extent than the elements on the previous slides. But in particular, we can see here that incentives and rewards and citizen science are much less frequently indicated as being addressed in a policy. But it's still interesting to note here as well that there are many indicated use cases and best practices, even in those countries where a policy is missing. So there is obviously a lot of things happening in this area as well. So in addition to the more visual graph views, I also want to point you to the table view, which allows you to get an overview of the data and to extract the data to allow for further analysis and for you to explore as well on how you would be able to use these data. This will allow for the aggregated analysis as well on the data that we have in there, and to calculate and compare the different numbers. And the upcoming report that has been mentioned previously by Gareth as well, and which is in draft, will contain more analysis of this data. But the quantification that shows the elements of open science being covered in different areas show that here that open access to data, data management and fair are the most commonly addressed elements, and these are followed by, not sure if I can point here, the preservation and reuse of data and the infrastructures that include aspects of open science. And the policies that are perhaps less covered in here are the open access to software and the citizen science, which here is around the 30% compared to the more frequently covered areas, which goes over 60%. So many countries have also provided use cases for the different areas, but I believe that Thomas will be talking more about that. But this is just a compilation of the number of countries that have provided use cases in the different areas, and which you have heard in previous sessions as well, that these will be collected in a catalogue of use cases. So just a little summary of that is that we can see that there's variation in the open science elements being addressed by policies in the different countries. And the most commonly addressed elements are the open access to data, data management, and fair preservation and reuse of scientific information and infrastructures. And the least addressed the open access to software and citizen science. So this shows that countries have reached different stages in the progress towards open science, and that knowledge between the countries can leverage the efforts to develop and implement policies. And as mentioned, we have just had a look here at the EOSC relevant policies, but there are much more data in there to be further explored. So please have a look in there and consider how you can use this data. So thank you.
Any questions for Sophia? Some questions? Everything was clear. Oh, there is one question. Please go ahead.
Is there any Thank you for the presentation. Is there any reflection on whether the results reflect reality, or is it just the people who answer, like what they think? Because I don't know, since I know that this is a survey and we are seeing results, but I don't know whether these results reflect reality or just what the people who answer think. Thank you.
I think that we haven't really looked into that aspect, but as Gareth mentioned previously as well, and Natalia was saying that there is the plan to link this to the links that are provided as well for the different policies, and that would allow for further exploration of what these policies cover and at what level they do so.
If I may comment on that, so this information has been approved by the ministries of the countries who validate that. So that's I think that's a very strong quality assurance as far as you trust your ministries. So it's not just somebody filling this in and then so there's a reference, right? There's a direct link to the ministry, to the research ministries in all the countries who have filled that in.
And that's a very good point.
Can I make a comment on that? So, sorry, Thomas Hedemark, European Commission. So one aspect that has not been mentioned yet is actually how the data is filled in. Because there are different roles in the system. So one quality assurance in the process of filling in the data is actually you have managers filling in it, like Volker Beckmann here is the manager of France in the EOSC Steering Board.
I'm the manager of...
sorry, yeah. The French manager representing France in the EOSC Steering Board expert group. But each manager can appoint contributors of data. That is national experts in their fields. So I think that actually the data that Sophia just presented pretty much shows who has filled this in. The frame was really EOSC relevant policies. So you see software and citizen science they are very absent, right? They are very low. Doesn't mean that all the countries does not have that. They may have it, but we do accept and we do understand and acknowledge that this is an iterative process that must go on for many years. So we will come closer to a more accurate picture. But I wouldn't say, as Volker said, it's still validated data that we have in there, but it's not the full picture. And that one we will have never, I guess, but we'll come closer to it so that we can learn more and advance open science. This is the plan. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe, but I think that the question maybe went a little bit deeper, you know, because I have experience with the DESI implementation and these kind of surveys, you know, and different countries, even the ministries, they are basically filling it different way, you know. So this is one thing, but I think that from the quality of insurance, that we already have some sort of another part in the member state that can kind of help, you know, and these are mandated organizations. So is there any idea to, for example, that they have to mandatory, you know, check that also regarding to the survey in the future calls, for example?
I think well, each manager for the survey can assign the different contributors that would be experts on the areas and have the dialogue with them. But then it's up to each country to.
Yeah, definitely. I understand it. But what's nice at the structure of EOSC is that you have the ministries also involved, definitely. But then you have a mandated organization in each country, you know. So this could become kind of, you know, co-work job, you know, on these surveys as a mandatory process, I would say. Thank you.
And I expect the mandated organizations also to have a role in there in many of the countries as well. And.
So a small comment on that before Volker gets to it. No, you are right. Yes, of course. What we really want to achieve with this survey, from the Commission side, we have, of course, we strongly support this direction. We have had monitoring. I'm saying now what I will say in a minute, but we support this, and we have pushed open science monitoring in front of us for a long time, and now we see some real evidence that this can be done. But it cannot be done just ad hoc or with, you know, close to guessing or whatever. So it has to be a strong tool that reaches all levels. And you heard yesterday in the opening of the symposium and the tripartite part that we connect the European, the national and institutional levels. And I would say that we need also to expand that to the international level so that we can bench learn with other countries, which we already do. But also the individual level. I think there is an aspect for the individuals also, but that has to be, you know, not on this data that we see now. But the key activity is the national coordination. So the national discussion with the mandated organizations having a key role in the national tripartite events, inviting the Commission, although you have just national discussions, of course, on this. So I will tell you in a minute that based on the data that we have and that we will collect, that you use this. And one nice thing is that all the data will be open. This is we are working the open science talk here. So it will be easy to scrutinize for anyone.
So Volker, and then we can take the questions or responses to the discussion after Thomas. So Volker,
just a short remark. So the first round we asked for national policies, we asked for investment. So this is information where you have to have the ministry level, because I cannot ask the mandated organization how much we are investing in our country, and that's the important point there, that you want the ministries to sign that and say this is how much we invest and these are our policies. So in this round, I would say that the mandated organizations didn't have necessarily additional information to add in there. Might be different in the next round where we go down to towards the institutional level as well.
And Jiri, to follow on to both points here, if you remember the four, at least what we've given the 4 domains of monitoring, we're now referring to the EOS Steering Board monitoring. But there is also the monitoring in the EOS partnership, and then there's the monitoring that's happening elsewhere, including what we will also do further in the observatory. So you will get overlaps, but probably also gaps. So they should, align and fill each other in, at least, if it's carried through.
Can your question wait until the discussion or not? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So Thomas now will talk about, the whole context.
Yes, thank you so much, Natalia, for inviting me, and thank you all. So monitoring is difficult, sensitive, and has a huge impact. So, but now we and the Commission, we have been engaged with this for a long time. We have engaged with expert groups, studies, projects, and we have indicators. We have loads of data that underpins a very nice monitoring framework, but it has never been put in place, really, until now, as I see it. And what I want to tell you is that we would like to scale this up. Already, it was launched today, right? But we already need to scale it up. And this, I guess, I hear from the discussion already. But I would like to start with a good job. So many people have been involved in this over the last year. And I have worked with open science monitoring for 10 years now. And I've seen we have tried to manage the indicators, the commercial, the proprietary data, mixing it with open data, etc. It's super difficult, and indicators are extremely sensitive. What I see now, what has been done, what Sophia showed you, what Volker showed you, and what is now implemented in this tool that Gareth presented, is actually a softer version, a more. It's not the exact details that provides the exact science, but it provides some solutions for advancing towards open science, connecting the policies and practice. So if you do not disagree, I would like to say a good job to all involved, our expert group, and the EOSC Future project, and I want to give them a big round of applause. Please help me. Having said that, having applause, it's not perfect. Okay. But nothing is perfect. Nothing will ever be perfect, right? And we are not looking for perfection. We want not perfection to stand in the way of good. We need something that is feasible, that works. And what we see with this tool now is that it is walking the open science talk, like you heard Commissioner Gabriel say yesterday morning. The data is open for anyone to scrutinize. It's not a closed system. It's not an analysis report you receive on your desk and you cannot double check how they came to this conclusion. No, everything will be open, of course. Having said that, everything is not open from the first survey. But it's because some of the data that we have in that survey we have discussed in many iterations, and we have learned that it's so difficult to explain because we have learned so much in this journey, and I've been heavily involved in the work of the expert group on this. So some data this is just difficult to explain, so we have left it out. But a very good job. It's not a PDF. Okay, good. So I want to point at this again, that we have complementary systems, a coordination. So the countries look at the EOSC readiness, that's a policies and practice, and how these link to each other, what Sophia just presented. But this is first and foremost now on the national level, but it spans over international, national, and in institutional levels, and regional levels, of course, because some countries, they measure regional level. This complements perfectly the scope of the partnership. So the partnership KPIs and the additional activities collected that you heard about from the EOSC Association yesterday. But there are other monitoring initiatives, and today I want to focus on these. Scaling up. So we have agreed in the tripartite to ensure the alignment, the directionality, and the complementarity. There it is. Among the three parties, that the European Commission, the member states, and the EOSC Association. These are, and coming together in this tripartite collaboration is a very strong push for the practical steps that needs to be taken towards open science. So the deployment of a single joint capacity, it's a strategy for coordinating, and this we have worked on. So the catalog of best practice that has been mentioned several times now, and I'll come back to that, is actually part of this. But when we talk about direction towards open science becoming the new normal, This is not a new thing talking about that. That is something that we already discussed in 2019 in the R9 days, long before we started the partnership. And back then, the EOSC Steering Board did not exist. We had a EOSC Governance Board back then, and it was a working group in the comitology. But the directionality means that we need to coordinate with other monitoring initiatives. Do we want to steer them? Do we want to tell them what to do? No. We want to coordinate. We need to ensure complementarity, that we walk towards open science together. And it's a long walk. It's a long walk to open science and EOSC. But we can only do that if we walk together. So please start your own monitoring framework, start your national monitoring, engage with monitoring open science, whatever you do it. But please be open science. Ensure that others can connect with you, interact, collaborate, and complement. Because this is what we are doing now. And we see from the Commission perspective that this is actually very successful. It works. Open science works, right? So scaling up the monitoring that we see. And now I'm not talking only about the EOSC Steering Board survey, of course, but with the data that will be in the EOSC Observatory needs to be used, needs to be reused for several purposes. And one immediate purpose for this year already is to ensure that we have a strong coordination with the European Research Area Policy Agenda. Michael Arntoft presented yesterday the European Research Agenda and the policy actions that will be taken on for the next period, which is 22 to 24. And one of them is EOSC, and there we have outcomes, which is also a monitoring mechanism. But the ERA will be monitored, the whole of ERA, the 20 actions in the ERA will be monitored with an ERA monitoring mechanism. And this mechanism includes 3 elements, or 4 actually. It's a scoreboard, a dashboard, and policy platform, and the reports from the Commission on the development and the data. The policy platform is the widest and perhaps most closed part of this monitoring mechanism. It should be a one-stop shop for the countries to go and find the data about how they are progressing in the ERA actions. There will be country pages there. And my question is, what will they look like? We don't know yet, because it will be developed now. You have there will be a dashboard with around 20 or 18 indicators. Also, that will be open, and there will be data there. Open access publications and open data through EOSC will be presented there. How will it be presented there? Scoreboard is a very small dashboard that really shows the European level progress for the ERA. And the only thing that they have been suggesting from the ERA Forum expert group, one of our expert groups, is to include these 3 indicators. But there are more indicators, right? We didn't see them now, but in the next survey, there are like many, is it 100 indicators, something like that? Minus the impact. And there are both data that will be collected from the countries and the managers and the contributors, but there are also automatically collected data that, of course, an employee at the ministry cannot collect or engage to collect. So, and this was an initiative by OpenAir and OpenAir, right, to complement the data with this, so they can show a more full picture. So how can this data then be used? I think that we can call it, we need to, of course, collect the information. So indicators could be subscribed from the ERA Forum expert group to the observatory. They will have everything open, so they can just tick what do they want to see in their policy platform. We can also perhaps, maybe they want to see the customized country pages. Can that be something that the EOSC Observatory proposes to include? Of course, there are different ways to include this data. There could be dashboard data, etc. Let's see. But this is on the table. This is in the discussion right now. And the scoreboard and the dashboard will be developed now via a public procurement. No, sorry, it's a framework contract development. So everything of this will be done now in December, and it will start developing the scoreboard and dashboard in January next year. The policy platform is still unclear how exactly it will be developed, the one-stop shop, but it's on the table. So this is one immediate coordination possibility that we see when we see now the EOSC Observatory. And this, we understood what the EOSC Observatory could do before we have seen it today and the launch today. So we could actually start thinking about this. And what we have seen, what Gareth has already presented, we see that it will be possible. One other coordination issue that we want, benefit, the value of the EOSC Observatory for our work in the European Commission is to help our expert group national points of reference. Many of the members of the national points of reference in the countries are also member representatives of the steering board. So there is an overlap. That's very good. Both the National Points of Reference Expert Group and the ERA Forum have been consulted in the process of developing the surveys that we have and the indicators, which has also led to the new indicator framework of the EOSC Steering Board Expert Group. So what we need to do in this expert group is to draft this report on access to and preservation of scientific information. It's a 2018 recommendation of the Commission, which this expert group will collect. And we have suggested that the expert group looks at the data they can now obtain from the EOSC Observatory, picks what they want to put into this report, and then we can populate the report with the data that they need. And we have a good coverage. We have compared the 2018 recommendations with the indicators in the EOSC Steering Board survey. We have discussed it with Technopolis Group and OpenAir too, because the open access to publications and the number of publications, that's not something that a member state representative can collect. It's a huge effort. But this is also one of the arguments that we learned that we're taking on board. So thank you for that. This comes next year, so we will have a meeting with the expert group probably around March next year. And in this work, there should be a plan on how this could play out, right? The third example I want to mention is a little farther away, but we are well consulted, and the Commission, as Michael Arnott said yesterday, is engaged in the working groups of the UNESCO, of course. Very important. They have an open science policy since last year, 21, and they also have a working group now on monitoring, developing a monitoring framework to accomplish this open science framework and plan. We have been engaged in that one. We have presented. They have an extremely ambitious timeline also. In June next year, they want to have a solid plan in place. They want to present to UNESCO a solid plan on how they what this monitoring framework will look like. It's a very complex task, and having been involved in many monitoring initiatives and projects, I think this is very ambitious. But where can we help? Maybe there is a task here for us when we present the observatory publicly from today on, that we can help on some indicators. We have 34 countries validating the first survey in the EOSC Observatory now. Next year, with the next survey, which opened yesterday by Sofia, we hope that we will have around 45 countries, which is really almost a bit more than the countries in the EOSC Steering Board. We have 43 countries in the EOSC Steering Board Expert Group, but we also have Switzerland answering the survey without being in the Steering Board. And as Sofia said yesterday, they're welcome to do that. Perfectly fine. I think we kind of miss UK. That would be nice to see, but any country who really wants to measure progress together with other countries are, of course, welcome to contact us to do this. So let's see what we can do to help UNESCO in their ambition here to monitor open science on a global level. Now, a few words on the use case catalog. The catalog of best practices was suggested of the EOSC Steering Board and the tripartite event, the Association, the Commission, and the Steering Board together in December 21. We all said that we should have this, we should draft this. This has a strong political backing. It has also been put in as one of the outcomes of the ERA Action 1 on Open Science and EOSC. So this is something that will happen and must happen. The purpose, of course, of this is not to have the perfect catalog of best practice, the best of the best. It's not that. The purpose is mutual learning, matchmaking, and push towards the better definition of what an EOSC investment and what an EOSC activity in the country really is. And of course, best practice, what is it? In this view that we have now, there are no indicators of what is best. And I don't see that these will be developed. But it's really, if a country reports that this is something we really trust and do for which is linked to EOSC, then obviously it's a good practice in that country. Validated by the ministry there. And catalog, I just problematize a bit here, is of course, ideally it should be an online interactive tool that can be filtered to present at a national level. And contrary to what Volker said earlier, I think that it would be good to zoom in on a country to see also where the best practices exist, in which organizations, etc., to help countries, to help also researchers. Perhaps it is interesting to find a citizen science initiative within animal science. For example, I was a researcher. I have not been working in research for 11 years now, but I want to go back. When we have solved this, when we have arrived at open science and the system is fixed, I will go back to research. And I want to do that. But I may need to ask the question, so where can I find a nice citizen science initiative within animal science? Do you know any tool that will present you that? You will not find it in the very nice STIP Compass by OECD, which is also a nice tool that shows all the policy documents, etc., maps and stuff. No, the EOSC Observatory will help you with that. Next step for this catalog will, of course, be to compile this into a nice document, because I don't see right now a web page for it. And then we will publish it in January as one of the results of the tripartite collaboration. And after that, we can continue the discussion, the analyzing this, discussing it, and ensure that we can improve. Perhaps we need also to discuss the boundary condition of what is a practice, what should it be, and when will it actually be very EOSC relevant. For example, how open will it be? Can anyone use this best practice, etc.? Let's see what we can do on this. So it's very nice. So who wants to see an initiative, a citizen science initiative within animal science? How many knows one? You know one? Yeah, of course. The family dog program in Hungary is an amazing initiative. It's huge. So this is one example from the catalog that you can actually see. And it's also a web page in English. Thank you, Volker, for the slide. Volker presented it in the closed tripartite event on Monday. Okay, let's not put more. So yeah, we move on. This is what the kind of catalog looks like now. It's just a long list, but I want to mention a few things here. Is there a pointer? No? No? So what we have done when we collected all these use cases, and I must say that some of the countries that filled in the survey they were a bit surprised, because this was not really part of the what they didn't grasp that this will happen. So what we did is we have all the use cases, we have a lot of links. Not all countries have yet validated the data here. But the links, so we can double check that these exist and work. And then, of course, we have, with the help of EOSC Future, mapped all the use cases with the objectives of the SRIA, the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda. So it's not perfect, again, it's not perfect, but it's close enough. So does this link this activity with an objective in the SRIA? How can we understand this? And the reason why we do this is, of course, to come closer to your country really do things that responds to the objectives of the SRIA. Have you considered this? And knowing this will, of course, provide a lot of good intelligence to the EOSC Association, right? Who will learn, see this, and look, this organization is not a member of the EOSC Association. It's not covered by the monitoring framework of the EOSC Association then. So maybe this organization should be a member of the association, etc., etc. But also for the main targeted EOSC Steering Board indicator categories. There are 80 indicator categories in the new EOSC Steering Board survey opening yesterday by Sofia. And these indicator categories, we have also mapped these objectives, these use cases with. This means that when the next survey now has started and anyone wants to fill in, is this a use case for infrastructure, data, citizen science, etc.? Yes or no? Then one can collect a lot of inspiration and lessons learned from this one. So it's, again, an iterative process where we learn. And it may sound simple, but it works. And this is the only purpose of this. So a few recommendations. We have grasped on the first survey, which I collected. Thank you, Vanya, for drafting that report. And I have shortened all the recommendations. But we see from already the first survey some clear tasks that we need to bring back to the expert group and discuss. There are several things that countries must do and take home, or should do. Of course, we don't tell them what to do nationally, of course, but this can really happen in the countries. And a lot of heavy weight on the national dialogue that we talked about earlier. Bring this back to the national dialogue. Is this the best picture of your country? Why is it? What happens? How can this advance open science? And when you fill in the next survey, what should the national coordination look like? What is the role of the mandated organization, etc.? And then we bring this back to the European level again and the next EOSC symposium, like we have done this time. There has been national dialogues in the national tripartite event. There have been many discussions, but I foresee and I hope that the upcoming national tripartite events and any national discussion will really be enriched and use the data that we see in the current survey. And of course, your national manager can log into the observatory, click print, and get the survey out, the new survey, in a paper format, and all the data can also be extracted from there by the national manager. Concluding, we need, when we see the openness, the dashboard in the EOSC Observatory is open. It really demands a higher level of coordination. Like the questions you already have raised today, why is it like this? So when we see the data, we are trained to react and criticize it, and this is welcome. This must happen more and even more often. So open discovery of data pushes the commitment, quality, and dialogue, and it has to do that. So walking the open science talk, as I started with, is something that we see works. Something that I really cherish with this monitoring system that we now see and have been launched today. And alignment and development of policies are important on all levels. Here I add what I mentioned earlier, the individual level. Maybe when I go back to research, I need to find that another animal science project or relevant to open science, and I will connect with it. I don't know if that is. It's just an idea, of course. But mainly for the countries, this is super important to cross-check and peer review each other's policies and help each other. The more open it is, the easier it is, of course. And my last point here is, of course, we should avoid all the time to avoid proprietary data. It will not work. And if we don't avoid it now, when we have a new, beautiful tool for monitoring open science, I don't know when we should start avoiding it. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. So may I ask the speakers to sit there so we can start, further, to continue the dialogue. Maybe you can have this also. So Thomas, thank you very, very much. because this has been inspiring. It's okay. This is why we let you, go over time, because I really like the presentation and inspiration. So before we start here, maybe we can go back to, to the question that the lady back there wanted to ask. Is it still relevant or not?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we will ask by this question.
Yeah, thank you all for those very interesting presentations. My question relates to the European Open Science Monitor, as I assume that this tool will be discontinued now. Or is there any link to it? Is there any reuse of maybe the data structure or something like this, for instance?
Can I ask you to say, to present yourself before you ask the question?
Yes, excuse me. I'm Nina Weisweiler from the Helmholtz Open Science Office and also representing Re3 Data.
Okay, so I think this is a question for Thomas. Yes. It's the Open Science, the EC Open Science Monitor from BAC.
Thank you so much for the question. It's a very good question, actually. So the Open Science Monitor has been paused, discontinued, and I think we need to come back to how we can build that in and coordinate with that. So I think it falls under the coordination issues that we need to ensure, of course.
So may I also add to this that in the Open Science Observatory from OpenAIRE is that we have also taken the methodology done by the Open Science Monitor. We have extended it. We use, because the major thing of that observatory, that Open Science Monitor, I think it was mainly the methodology on not open data. And I think also that many countries that are going, and have their own open science monitors. Germany is one of them, France is one of them. So they do have, all of this monitoring, not so much on the policies, but on the uptake. So there are efforts, and I think, this is where we need to converge. Any other question before I start my questions? Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Luc Brinkman from DANS in the Netherlands. I have a question for Volker. You mentioned also the monitoring of impact, and it's all only scheduled for 2028. But I was still wondering, do you already have some ideas about how you want to put this to practice? How, in particular, the monitoring of the reproducibility and the uptake in society?
Well, I mean, this goes very much in what the EOSC Association is monitoring, right? I mean, to see. You start with how many data curators, etc. you put in, and then you come to the more difficult questions you are mentioning. So of course I don't have all the answers to that, but this is why we have to work together there. So that's definitely not an expertise we have at the steering board level, right? There we really have to go to the providers and to the association members.
And I saw in Thomas' slides also there was a mention of the Pathos project. Is it also, will that also be feeding into that then?
Which project?
So yes, maybe I can pull it up. It might take me a minute.
So maybe I can say a few words about Pathos. Pathos is also about the impact of open science. So it will investigate and explore. So we will see how the methodology of Pathos fits into that. So we will do, cost-benefit analysis there, but it's mainly about the methodology. It's not about, Pathos is supposed to deliver results, but the methodology to be uptaken and validated by organizations and steering board members.
Julia, can you pull up the slides for me?
Yours.
Yeah.
And maybe, okay.
There's one here, go down.
Maybe you go on with your question.
Down to the bottom.
Hi, I'm Helen Clare from JISC in the UK. I was really interested to see this catalogue of best practices. That looks like it's going to be fantastic. I've got two questions about that. One is, are the submissions to that catalogue tied into the survey, or will you be able to add ongoing submissions to that? And the second question is around, so there are parallels here to research publication itself and the publication of positive results. all the time. I wondered, is there going to be a place for capturing lessons learned? So it's not always about showcasing success, but also about capturing lessons learned.
So first, here we link at the national level our policy issues with use cases. So there it's kind of closed in that sense. But of course, the association is also collecting use cases, and this list is very open, right? I mean, we hope that we will have a very rich catalog by next year. And for the second question, you answer. I forgot the question.
It was about submission, right?
That was about submission, but I'm also conscious that we can all showcase success. You know, we love to showcase success, but it's about lessons learned and, you know,
like worst practice.
Yes, yeah, almost.
So in the new survey, as I understand it, there will be. We haven't shown the new survey actually yet, but for all of these categories and the survey questions asked, there will be fields where you're expected to provide lessons learned. So one document that is key to understand this, and that we should actually present this, is an opinion paper by the EOSC Steering Board presented yesterday. So it will be publicly, your national coordinator will, or a member of the Steering Board will of course have access to it.
It's a bit difficult for
UK. Well, you should have access to it. You will have access to it. It will be published soon. The only delay now is the commission procedure to publish the document, but we can share it with you, of course. But in this document, there are objectives and recommendations on what should be done among the EOSC Steering Board members to advance towards open science, being in the new normal. And among these recommendations, you know, it's a heavy focus on mutual learning, sharing experiences both in using the survey tool, but also what their use cases are about, and etc. So that we, as I mentioned in my slides, facilitate the mutual learning. Because I like what you say, because not only the perfect example, but the worst, as what you said, are important.
Maybe I can come back to the question on impact. So we didn't show this, but this is the monitoring framework for the EOSC Steering Board for national contributions to EOSC. And the idea here is that this framework will be directly translated into survey questions, which it has been. And that this is now what will be tracked over the coming years. So that first survey data that you see is a pilot and is one of a kind, because from this year forward, this is how it will be actually presented in the survey and in the tool. So what you have are this shopping list that I said. So you have these 3 higher level dimensions of policies, practices and impact, which you've heard from Thomas, Volker and Sophia. And then we have these categories that are relevant for EOSC, that there's no specific EOSC category. There's categories linked to open science in EOSC, such as publications, data, software, infrastructure, skills training, assessment and engagement, such as citizen science. And what we have at the moment is we've developed policies and practices. So the indicators there, they basically look like this. Do you have a national policy on X, being publications, data, software, go down the list? Do you have a financial strategy on this, yes or no? How many RPOs have a policy on this in your country? How many RPOs have a policy on this? And then into practices, are you monitoring this nationally? All of the categories. Do you have a use case? And then they fill in more information there, so Thomas's catalogue gets bigger. How much are you investing in all of this individually or not? And what are the specific output indicators like fair data sets, publications, software sets, services, repositories, and so forth. Indicators have not yet been developed for impact. Reason for that is we're waiting on the Commission, first of all, to start developing the concept of impact pathways. And there's a project that has just started called Pathos Pathways to Open Science. We're aligning with them now because they're building a much bigger framework than what we're looking for. And the idea is that they align with us, we align with them, get input from them. And I think before the end of the project, try to develop the indicators for impact and then actually release them in next year's survey so that we can also start tracking that. So the data in the observatory won't be fully aligned, right? This year, last year is not fully aligned with what will come next year on. And we will only have policies and practices because that's what we're collecting now. But from the following year on, you'll also have impacted and start tracking that longitudinally. Ron, do you want to say something about Pathos?
Just that Ron Dekker, Technopolis, and together with Natalia also in Pathos. Just to remark that we are using the same categories on the left-hand side to make sure that we fully align with the policies and practices.
Yeah. And it's not only Pathos. I think, from the work program of the Commission, we see many projects that will need to fill into this. So this is where the collaboration with the EOSC Association is of key importance. Any other questions? Because we have, we are closing time. So I think it has been interesting, and one of the key things is that I get from like a take home message is that we need to have perhaps a discussion not only with the steering board but and the Commission, but also with the community. So this is the lesson that the take home message that I get. So may I go to each of you and say what would you like, what is the message that you would like to convey, what is next steps or message, or what would you like to say as a closing statement? Starting from Sophia. Yes, Sophia.
Well, I like to invite everyone to contribute to the survey, and we're looking forward to seeing this national coordination, and we'll have a lot of things to do with that as well, with identifying who's going to be contributing to the survey as well, and where we have this national expertise and knowledge, and make this a collaborative effort.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, when we look at this first survey, we have to focus on what this is for. So this first survey was really for the ministries to see where we are with policies and investment, and then to push this, once we have the results, back into our systems and say, well, here we don't have a policy. Do we have to have one? And what is the next step there? Do we have enough investment into EOSC, and what is the next step there? So in the next year's survey, of course, we go to other aspects of open science, and then we'll widen more to the institutional level. But right now, I think your comments very often go in the direction, why is this and that not covered? Because we come from the national ministries, and we want to use this as a leverage to improve the situation for EOSC in our countries.
Thank you.
And maybe just to add to that, to note that these indicators are not set in stone. Well, some of them, for instance, are, I would say, almost testing, because we're trying to get data on fair data sets, or open data sets, or services that are offered through EOSC, or repositories connected through EOSC. So we are asking these questions. We're trying to get the data, but what does it actually mean that if there is a fair data set out there published somewhere? Is it in a repository? Is it fair compliant? How do we know it's fair compliant? And that follows true also for services offered through EOSC. What does that mean? Offered at a national level, what does that mean if it's a research infrastructure or cross-country infrastructure such as CERN? So some of these indicators, I think we'll learn over time if they're the right indicator or if we have the right data set. But I think crucially the idea here is that this is in development. The tool, this is the first iteration. It's definitely not perfect, as Thomas says, but we have now just under a year within this project to continue this forward, start developing it, get more data in, get more surveys out, and also develop the functionalities that will be there. So, we are looking for input from the community, because you're going to use this, so send us the input.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to come back to what I said and summarize it perhaps, that I have never seen such a strong and promising, easy to use tool for open science before. This is the first time I see it. So, which also should add then, have this strong political backup. So many countries have support this, contribute with data, and accept to walk the open science talk. And this is the message to anyone who develops monitoring frameworks out there. Walk the open science talk if you monitor open science. Be open and share everything so that we can scrutinize, because it's not fair to those who contribute if they cannot calculate themselves what is in the monitoring framework. So being open. And the message to anyone in this room and anyone who encounters this tool, of course, to use it, learn from it, see or criticize it by all means a lot, and align, and then of course complement. provide complementary data, discuss and align nationally, and contribute to the tool wherever you can. So not the tool itself, but with the data, because only by showing this data we can scrutinize this and advance closer to open science becoming the new normal. And I can get back to research.
Thank you. But, before closing, because we have, EOSC is tripartite. So we have the steering board, we have the commission, but we have also people here from the EOSC Association. So, what would be the take-home message for you, or, the message that you would want to convey in relation to what you have, seen today or heard today?
Thank you a lot for the question, and we see, I think, all this with great interest, and it's a huge development from last year when we started the conversation. It is a pity, I would like to say, that we didn't manage to integrate our own strand of activities into this first exercise. And I do hope that this will materialize in the future, that we continue to work together to make it happen. I think we need to work on aligning these categories so that at some point when data will be together, we will have a way to look into the information in a structured way, and we don't have to do the job of realigning the information. That would be possibly impossible. So we all have categories from one framework, another framework. We should really sit down and decide, okay, this set of indicators that have this kind of common denominator can fit under this category, so that then we can look into this. And I've already looked a bit into the observatory, the few maps. I will have some remarks, but we can discuss that separately.
Yes.
And so I would like to say congratulations on this first display of the potential of this tool. And hopefully we will manage to get something really integrated for the future.
I think it's not just about integration. I think it's also what Volker said. This survey. How did you call it? Fatigue. Okay. At least from the open air members, what I would like to say is that if we have different surveys, different observatories, different everything. It's just that we don't get a clear message out. And this is also the second thing that I would like to say is that we should align the tripartite, the three parties of the EOSC. We should align, but also what is happening at the national level should align, because we know of many observatories of different kinds, and we're not saying that these kind of things should be implemented at the national level, but at least they should be compatible, if I may say. Thank you so much for this conversation and dialogue, and so looking forward to next year. Yeah. Thank you very much. Where's Julia?
Hello, sorry, a quick announcement. Now we are going to have lunch, but at 2 p.m. at Meridian, we will have an EOSC quiz, and we would like all to be there at 2 p.m. A EOSC quiz.